Most people think they understand the laws in their own state. You grow up there, you drive the roads, you follow the basic rules, and you assume you would know if something you do every day was illegal. But Arizona is one of those states where that assumption can quietly get people into trouble. Beneath the laws everyone talks about are rules that almost nobody mentions. Some are old, some are rarely enforced, and some are enforced regularly, just not in ways people expect. And as Arizona moves into 2026, many of these laws are still very much active. What makes Arizona especially tricky is how much of its law enforcement power is shared between the state and local governments. A behavior that might be ignored in one city can be cited just a few miles away. That inconsistency creates a false sense of safety, where people assume something is legal simply because they have never been stopped for it before. But legality and enforcement are not the same thing, and that gap is where people get caught off guard. One of the most common examples of this involves sleeping in your car. Most people assume that if you are not driving, you are doing the responsible thing by pulling over. And in many situations, that is true. But in Arizona, sleeping in your vehicle is not automatically legal. There is no single statewide law that clearly allows it everywhere. Instead, cities and counties are allowed to create their own rules, and many of them treat sleeping in a car the same way they treat camping in public spaces. That means if you are parked overnight on certain streets, near parks, or in busy downtown areas, you can be cited or told to move, even if you are quiet and causing no disturbance. This catches tourists constantly, especially people passing through the state who assume they can safely sleep in their car for a few hours. What makes it even more confusing is that rest areas are not always a guaranteed loophole. Some Arizona rest stops limit how long you can stay, and overnight sleeping may be restricted unless signs specifically allow it. Things become even more serious when alcohol is involved. Arizona has some of the strictest DUI laws in the country, and officers are allowed to consider something called actual physical control. That means if you are asleep in your car and the keys are accessible, law enforcement can still argue that you had the ability to drive, even if you never moved the vehicle. People are often shocked to learn that they can be charged without ever turning the engine on. Going into 2026, this remains one of the most misunderstood legal risks in the state. Another law that surprises people involves wildlife. Arizona has strict rules about interfering with animals, even when the intent is good. It is illegal to harass, feed, or interfere with wildlife without proper authorization. This includes animals people do not usually think of as dangerous or protected. Feeding deer near your home, approaching wild horses for photos, or trying to help an injured animal on your own can all technically violate state law. The reasoning behind these rules is conservation and public safety. When animals become accustomed to humans, they are more likely to wander into neighborhoods, cause accidents, or become aggressive. Ironically, well-meaning human interaction often leads to animals being euthanized later. But the law does not consider intent the way people expect. Even trying to help can result in a fine if authorities believe your actions interfered with wildlife. As Arizona's population continues to grow and suburbs expand into desert and rural areas, enforcement of these laws has increased. Arizona Game and Fish has focused heavily on public education in recent years, which usually signals that violations are becoming more common. Many residents do not realize how strict these rules are until they are warned or cited. Privacy laws are another area where Arizona quietly surprises people. Arizona is known as a one-party consent state for audio recording, which leads many people to believe that recording conversations is generally legal. But the reality is more complicated. One-party consent applies to private conversations where one person involved agrees to the recording. It does not mean that all recording in public spaces is automatically legal. Arizona law still protects situations where a person has a reasonable expectation of privacy. This includes obvious places like bathrooms and changing rooms, but it can also apply to certain conversations in public settings, depending on context. The biggest issue comes when video recording includes audio. People assume that if they are filming in public, they can record everything they hear. In reality, recording someone's voice without consent can still create legal issues if the conversation was not directed at the person recording. This has become increasingly relevant with social media, live streaming, and confrontation-style videos. As technology evolves, Arizona courts are still working through how older privacy laws apply to modern content creation. The result is a legal gray area that can catch creators and everyday people by surprise. Going into 2026, the safest assumption in Arizona is that video is usually less risky than audio, and that misunderstanding the difference can create real problems. Vehicle laws are another place where Arizona's rules catch people off guard, especially when it comes to alcohol. Many people assume that as long as the driver is sober, passengers are allowed to drink. In Arizona, that is not true. Open container laws apply to the entire passenger area of a vehicle, not just the driver. If an open container is accessible to passengers, it can result in a citation. This includes ride shares, limousines, and party buses unless they meet very specific legal requirements. The container does not even need to be actively consumed. If it is open and reachable, that can be enough. Tourists are especially vulnerable to this law during festivals, sporting events, and nightlife outings in cities like Scottsdale, Tempe, and Phoenix. Enforcement has increased in recent years, and going into 2026, Arizona continues to treat alcohol-related vehicle laws very seriously. One of the least understood laws in Arizona involves property responsibility. Under Arizona's facilitation and nuisance laws, it can be illegal to knowingly allow certain unlawful activity to continue on your property, even if you are not directly involved. This means homeowners, landlords, and short-term rental hosts can be held responsible if illegal activity occurs and they are aware of it. The key factor is knowledge, but proving knowledge does not always require a confession. Repeated complaints, warnings, or obvious signs can be enough for authorities to argue that the property owner allowed the activity to continue. With the rise of vacation rentals and short-term stays across Arizona, this law has become more relevant than ever. Cities have increasingly relied on it to crack down on nuisance properties, illegal events, and unpermitted gatherings. Most people never realize how much legal responsibility comes with owning or renting property until they receive a notice or fine. The law does not require participation, only allowance. And as Arizona continues to grow into 2026, enforcement of this rule has become more common, not less. What makes all of these laws unsettling is not that they exist, but that so few people know about them. They are not designed to trap people, but they feel that way when they are enforced without warning. The combination of local control, inconsistent enforcement, and outdated assumptions creates a situation where people believe something is legal simply because they have never been told otherwise. Arizona is one of the fastest-growing states in the country, and growth always brings tighter enforcement of laws that used to be ignored. Whether you live there full-time, visit occasionally, or are thinking about moving, understanding these hidden rules matters more than most people realize. If any of these laws surprised you, let me know which one caught you off guard the most. And if you want more videos uncovering the laws people never talk about, subscribe for more state secrets. Because every state has them, and most people never see them coming.